Today we're looking at 10 foreign films that show how wild, strange, and unexpected the horror genre can be outside of Hollywood. My name is Daniel with the Cobwebs channel, and let's get started. Errementari, The Blacksmith, and the Devil from 2017. In a remote 19th century Basque village, a demonic secret hides behind the walls of a blacksmith's forge, until a curious orphan girl unleashes a deal with the devil. This is a Spanish and French co-production in the Basque language, but it's also available in English on Netflix, and it's based on a Basque folktale called The Smith and the Devil. And honestly, this movie does seem more concerned with being a dark folktale or even fairy tale than even being a horror movie that's trying to scare you. It's less scares, more just dark, fantastical vibes, and I love that. I love the look and vibe of this movie so much, and this is one reason that I am interested in foreign films, because there's just so much stuff out there that you don't even know exists that's just waiting for discovery. Like, I personally am obsessed with dark, gothic, folk horror looking movies that look like Robert Eggers' The Witch or Tim Burton's Sleepy Hollow, and sometimes I feel like I've seen all the movies that are like that, but not when you go into foreign cinema, because this movie was such a treat for me to discover recently. It's totally got that vibe. It's not a big budget movie, but they did the most they possibly could with the budget, and it legitimately looks fantastic. I definitely enjoyed the story of the film. It feels like a fairly simplistic folktale, but it's not slow. It moves at a good pace. And while it's not amazing on a character front, I definitely did enjoy learning more about the blacksmith, his story, seeing the relationship blossom between him and this little girl, and learning more about their origins. But my favorite character in the movie is a demon. That is my favorite thing about this film. This is a demonic horror film where a demon is a regular character in the movie, and they went so classic with the demon design. They weren't trying to shake anything up, have some new fresh take. No. This is a horned, pointy-eared, pointy-tailed, red demon. The makeup effects are spectacularly good. It reminded me of something I would see in a Guillermo del Toro movie, and it's just rare to see that quintessential type design in a movie, and they really go all out with satanic horror. There's even a sequence in hell. Showing hell is one of my favorite things that a movie can do, because it just allows for so much dark creativity. This movie was such a gem. I'm so glad I finally found it, because of one of you guys in the comments section, by the way. This is exactly the kind of movie I love to look for, and this is a good one.
Kau akan dijadikan Ratu Ilmu Hitam.
The Queen of Black Magic from 1981. This follows Myrnie, a village woman who is accused of witchcraft and thrown off a cliff by angry villagers. Miraculously surviving, she is rescued and trained in black magic for real to take revenge on those who wronged her. This is an Indonesian film in the Indonesian language, and if you're wondering how can you possibly find an Indonesian movie from the 80s, well, it was recently added to Shudder, which is super cool. That's where I watched it. And I'm so glad I did, because I just recently finished this novel, Slewfoot, which is an incredible folk horror novel that came out a few years ago. I absolutely loved this book. And this is about a woman accused of witchcraft who then learns real witchcraft to get some absolutely savage, horrific revenge that is awesome. And I was reading this thinking I would love to watch a movie that's kind of like this. And The Queen of Black Magic actually does have a similar kind of plot, so it kind of scratched that itch. The vibe of the movie kind of reminds me of Shaw Brothers movies, which is really fun, very high energy, memorable actors, really no fat on the bones. It moves very, very quickly. And it's filled with outrageous special effects, like crazy gore and goop, exploding heads, boiling skin, floating heads, and the best decapitation scene I've maybe ever seen. And I know that's like crazy high praise, but this decapitation is a wonder to behold. Like, you've got to see this movie at least for that. The lead actress in the movie is named Susanna. I thought she was very good in the movie, likable, very sympathetic. This takes kind of a complicated view of women who do black magic, because she does do kind of terrible things. She does savagely kill people for sure, but she always stays sympathetic, understandable. She is getting revenge for people that treated her absolutely horribly. This is the film that apparently helped cement this actress as the queen of Indonesian horror, which is very cool. This is just an interesting story. It's got endearing characters. It moves very well and has absolutely wild 80s practical effects. So this was a real gem. I'm so glad I saw it. Viking Wolf from 2022. You want to talk about horror movies with amazing titles? Viking Wolf has got to be one. As soon as I found out this movie existed, I knew I had to watch this. It's a film from Norway in the Norwegian language, but you can also watch it in English on Netflix. And I love the tagline of this movie. It's all werewolves have a story. This is the Norwegian one. Just kind of saying like, yeah, it's just a werewolf movie, but it's Norwegian this time. That's kind of what the movie is. Now, it's got an absolutely metal opening that is so awesome, that takes place in Viking times and tells you basically the origin of this werewolf curse in this country. And it's awesome. And one day I would love to see a movie that delivers like of the whole movie in that kind of way. Robert Eggers might actually be making one. He's making a werewolf movie that might end up being that, and it would be super cool. But that's just the opening. Then it cuts to present day, and it's about a family that recently moved to Norway. It's about a teenage girl, but I still really like the movie. I thought it was a really good vibe. Now, just seeing the countryside in Norway is so beautiful. Like, all of the scenery, the nature in this film, to me, was just kind of jaw-dropping. I'm a little bit of a nature lover, for sure. And I just wanted to go to Norway all through watching this. Like, my gosh, this is such a beautiful country. But yeah, it is a very standard werewolf story that's not very original. I see a lot of people knocking it for that in reviews on Letterboxd. This has really bad reviews on Letterboxd. I even saw some reviews saying like, oh, more typical Netflix garbage. Like, guys, a Norwegian werewolf film is not typical Netflix garbage. Putting two middle-aged movie stars together to be a married couple super spy family, that is typical Netflix garbage. Not Norwegian werewolf movies. But I love typical werewolf movies. I thought the main teen character was good. She was likable enough. She's got a little bit of tragedy in her backstory that made her interesting, though maybe a little bit thin. But I like that her mom was really like a co-lead, and her mom is a member of the police force there in Norway, and she's like investigating the werewolf murders. So I really enjoyed going back and forth between them. The werewolves you get here are CGI, but I thought they looked good. They looked real enough. I'm always going to prefer a practical werewolf, but this was one of the better CGI werewolves that I've seen. Had a really good design, and there's actually a really solid transformation sequence that if it didn't have a lot of practical effects, it fooled me. It looked really, really good. And what I really enjoyed here is this drives home the tragedy of a werewolf curse. That's my favorite kind of werewolf movie. I like it to feel really tragic, and this one does. A werewolf curse feels like a horrible, devastating, life-ending thing in this movie, and I really like that they drove that home. The Spider Labyrinth from 1988. A young professor travels to Budapest to locate a lost colleague. Once there, he gets tangled up in a supernatural mystery around a cult. If you've dipped your toes into foreign horror films at all, and I know pretty much everybody from my audience has, you guys are super knowledgeable, you've probably at least seen a lot of Italian horror films from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. This is an Italian one, but it can be watched in Italian or English. And this is one of those Italian horror films that's really more about the vibes and the crazy stuff that happens rather than the plot. This is a film that I heard about for a long time, though it was very difficult to get a hold of. Now it's available on Blu-ray and 4K from Severance. I believe it's on streaming now as well. I'll let you know at the end of the video. And this is really an example of weird fiction. That's the goal. It's trying to be a part of the weird genre. And if you never heard of that, and I really hadn't until fairly recently, it's basically horror fantasy that's exploring the unknowable, the unnatural. H.P. Lovecraft is actually a foundational figure of weird fiction. And the Spider Labyrinth is indeed very weird. The title is literal. There's a labyrinth. There are spiders. There are spider creatures. There are gruesome and super stylish murder sequences that feel very influenced by Dario Argento. But for a lot of the movie, you are going to follow this one guy uncovering a mystery. So it's got a little bit of a neo-noir vibe to it. Whenever I heard people talk about this movie, I felt like they overhyped the craziness a little too much. When it shows up, I'm telling you, there's some bonkers stuff. There is a practical effect near the end of the movie that knocked my socks off, but a lot of the movie is investigating. And my biggest problem with the film is this main actor, who is truly horrible. And I actually recently got made fun of on a live stream a little bit with a bunch of guys where somebody brought up this movie and I was talking about how bad the main actor was. And they were like, oh, bad acting in an Italian horror film. How crazy. Look, I know there's bad acting in a lot of Italian horror films. This guy is another level. He is beyond monotone, flat. This dude cannot deliver a line to save his life. And I do wish that was different because everything else about the movie is actually of a very high level. Like, it looks fantastic. It's got a great score. Like I said, great practical effects. If you can just look past this one dude at the center of the film, Spider Labyrinth is exactly the kind of strange, unnatural feeling foreign horror film you're probably looking for. This night, I'll possess your corpse, from 1967. This is a Brazilian film in the Portuguese language, and it's the second movie in the Coffin Joe series. The first Coffin Joe film, At Midnight I'll Take Your Soul, was actually the first horror film ever made in Brazil. The Coffin Joe movies are written, directed by, and starring Jose Mojica Marins, who is a guy who just created this horror franchise about this spooky guy. He's an undertaker who is obsessed with creating the perfect son to start an ultimate race. And basically these movies are about him trying to find the perfect woman with whom to make this son. And he basically kills and tortures his way through different people while he's on this quest. I find it very interesting that when this guy decided to make Brazil's first horror movie, he didn't like go, I'm going to make a werewolf movie, I'm going to make a vampire movie, a haunted house movie. No, I'm going to make a movie about this spooky undertaker trying to make a great kid. And the first and second film are a fairly similar plot, and they're pretty close in quality. I'm recommending the second one because I do like it a little more. It's a bigger, better production than the first one. You can tell he got a little bit more money to it, and the whole thing just feels slicker, more polished, and more demented. Yes, this is about this guy killing and torturing through people on this quest. There are really sick and demented murder sequences. He's not just going around stabbing people or strangling people like Vincent Price. No, like, he's doing just horrific things, even involving spiders. There's some sick stuff. As in both films, he gives a very intense performance as Coffin Joe. This is definitely a scary guy who does monologue a lot about his various life philosophies, about like how much he hates God and how much he wants to make the ultimate race. He's a crazy dude. But another thing that really makes me love this one in particular over the first one is this is another movie with a sequence in hell. Like I said, I love a scene in hell. It's such a great opportunity for dark creativity, and this movie really goes for it, even turning the black and white photography into color. Really cool stuff. Hatching, from 2022. A lonely girl discovers a strange egg in the woods and secretly raises what hatches, a grotesque creature living embodiment of her repressed emotions. This is a really interesting and unique movie from Finland in the Finnish language, and I think the thing that I really love about this movie, not necessarily that it's a creature feature or that it really delivers on having a cool monster, but I love how damning this is of family vloggers. The personal drama was way scarier than the horror because this girl's mother is a very involved family vlogger on social media, and she is always pushing the image that she has the perfect family, dragging all of her family into it. And this movie makes you feel that. Like, that's a big cultural conversation I feel right now. A lot of people talk about how unethical these family vlogging channels can be when they're using the kids on camera, for sure. And this is one of the few movies that really tackles that topic in a very direct and unapologetic way. Gotta be one of the top burn in hell moms. She is awful. She is such a horrible villain here. But as a monster movie, It's pretty awesome. It's like this chicken monster that comes out of the egg. Really cool practical effects, totally practical. They do awesome stuff with the makeup and the animatronics and design. I really, really respected it. But this is very much a metaphor movie. It's a movie that tackles an idea that happens in the real world to families and dramatizes it in a horror, fantasy, almost fairy tale way. And I'm not always the biggest fan of metaphor movies. Sometimes I just want the monster to be a monster and not necessarily a symbol for something. But this film really pulls it together by the end. It comes together very, very well, and I really respect it. Mr. Vampire from 1985. The planned reburial of a village elder goes off the rails as the corpse resurrects into a hopping, bloodthirsty vampire threatening mankind. This is a Hong Kong film in Cantonese, and it's about the Chinese legend of Jiangxi, which is basically their version of vampires, hopping vampires. And I really want to talk about this on this list because this list is ultimately about what are the different kinds of horror that you can see if you watch movies from other countries. And I really felt that idea in such a literal sense when I first watched this movie because it's about vampires, which is my favorite horror subgenre. I'm obsessed with vampires, but I didn't recognize pretty much anything about the legend of vampires in this movie. Like every little thing is so different, and it just really drives home that like if you watch a vampire movie from another country, it might be something that you completely don't expect and could be a really cool discovery. These are hopping vampires, so they do hop. The vampire has a great look. They really went all out with the makeup, but the vampires aren't even my favorite source of horror in the movie. There's also randomly a ghost woman here that even one of the characters has this like romantic relationship with. It's the most interesting subplot in the movie. And I thought the ghost stuff like was really, really cool. There's some really cool visuals to it. Very, very creative. So good vampire movie, maybe even a little bit better ghost movie. And like pretty much any horror movie that you watch from Hong Kong, there's also going to be action. If you watch a horror movie from America, you're probably not going to see a lot of martial arts and epic fight scenes, but you will in Mr. Vampire, and that just really adds to the fun. It's a horror movie, but it's also got comedy, not all of which works for sure, but some of it's pretty good. Vampires, ghosts, martial arts, it's pretty awesome, and if you watch Mr. Vampire, I can't imagine you won't have a good time.
Brotherhood of the Wolf.
Brotherhood of the Wolf from 2001. In 18th century France, a knight and his Native American friend are sent by the king to a remote province to investigate the killings of hundreds by a mysterious beast. It's a French film in French, but it's also available in an English dub, at least on Blu-ray and 4K that I know for sure. And this is another film that when I first saw it quite a few years ago now, it's one that really drove home for me the kind of different cinematic experiences you can have when you watch a movie from another country. Because this was exactly the kind of movie that I had no idea even existed. It is such a genre hybrid in such a crazy way. It's a horror movie, it's a monster movie, a creature feature for sure, but it's also this lush period piece drama. It's a bit of a political thriller. It's a romance. It's very sexy. And it's an action movie, and it has got incredible action sequences. This is another one where you're going to get some martial arts. Does it make a lot of sense why there's martial arts here? It definitely less than it does in Mr. Vampire, but whatever, man. It is awesome. You get direct-to-video action star Mark Dacascos as the Native American, and he just rules here. He's insanely cool. The film is loosely based on an old legend called the Beast of Gavadon, some real-life killings that actually happened in France, and it takes that idea in a really interesting direction. There is a huge epic monster in here. Another one where it uses CGI, but it's 2001, so you kind of got to forgive it. It was that time period. And I just think if this was an American movie, if it was in English, it would be a classic that like everybody would know, that so many households would have a VHS tape or a DVD of in the early 2000s. But because it's French, it's a little bit less well known. It is an epic film. It's 2.5 hours long, and maybe it is a little bit too long. Maybe you kind of feel that runtime. But the first time I watched it, I didn't. I was just enthralled by the unique experience it was and had so much fun with Brotherhood of the Wolf.
Freak of nature, a slave with a body broken from torture. Beware the Hunchback of the Morgue.
Hunchback of the Morgue from 1973. A hunchback working in a morgue falls in love with a sick woman. After she dies, he goes on a brutal murder spree and seeks help from a mad scientist to bring her back from the dead. This is a Spanish film in Spanish, but also available in English dub in some places, and it's a Paul Naschy movie. And as you guys know, I'm a huge fan of Paul Naschy, and this one might be my very favorite of his movies. I think it's one of the films he did that's like legitimately a really good movie. Like, Naschy actually gives a terrific performance here as this hunchback character. He's very sympathetic, even when he's doing horrible things. Like, Naschy really brings out the heart of this character. This definitely is not his version of Hunchback of Notre Dame, although it does take certain ideas like unrequited love and such like that from that story. But really, it's a little bit of a giallo film. It feels kind of giallo, especially when he's going on these killing sprees. There's some really gory murder scenes. Like, this might be Paul Naschy's goriest movie, potentially. Very, very bloody stuff. But also, it's kind of a Frankenstein movie. Not explicitly. The mad scientist isn't Dr. Frankenstein. He's not exactly making a Frankenstein monster. But it takes a lot of ideas from that story just with the hunchback character as the main character. And the movie builds suspense really well on what is it that this mad scientist is creating. What is this creature hidden behind this wall? And when we find out, it delivers. Like, it's gross, it's disgusting. You guys know how much I love Paul Naschy, so it's saying something when I say I think this is his best. It's got a lot of really interesting twists on typical gothic horror tropes.
我找到你了。
The Sadness from 2021. A young couple is pushed to the limits of sanity as they attempt to be reunited amid the chaos of a pandemic outbreak, as those infected are driven to enact the most cruel and depraved things imaginable. This is a Taiwanese movie in Taiwanese and Mandarin, and I saved this one for last because I thought it might be the one you guys get the most excited for, because lately, over the past couple of months or so, I have gotten such an onslaught of comments from people about The Sadness. Like, you've got to watch The Sadness. When are you going to talk about The Sadness? So I was like, all right, I got to bump this one up my list. I got to check it out. And I watched it last night. And this is indeed a really good movie and a very uncomfortable watch. It is interesting that it was made in 2021 and it is about a pandemic, and very clearly they're trying to make some real life parallels. They're very on the nose about that, but this is a very different kind of virus. It is a virus kind of, you could say, like in The Crazies or in 28 Days Later, where it just turns people crazy into murderous psychopaths. But I thought this one had a really interesting twist on it, at least very different from 28 Days Later for sure, because these are not zombies. These are people with just no impulse control that are just pushed by their brains to commit acts of depravity. And the things that are done on screen are so horrific. This movie is really extreme. It is super bloody, really savage, pretty darn disturbing. But it doesn't forget to have a human heart at the center of it. And that's what you got to have for a movie like this, because if you're just throwing, and I've seen several movies that just throw a lot of gore at the audience, a lot of disturbing stuff, but when there isn't like a human heart at the center, it doesn't really matter and it doesn't really affect me that much. But when you give me characters, as this movie does, a young couple at the start, do just enough to set them up, to get me to care about them, to like them, I'm rooting for them to make it out of this thing. And then I care about these horrible things going on. Then I get uncomfortable. Then I get tense. I also like that this isn't just crazy people running around killing people. That's what it is. But the movie takes its time and puts in the thought to kind of create real villain characters, to create like monsters. Like the long gray-haired person at the beginning is super scary. And especially the guy in a suit from the train, who really turns into like the main antagonist of the movie. He is terrifying. Like anytime you see him on screen, you're like, oh no, something horrific is going to happen. And it always does. He's a super scary character. I will say, as far as criticisms, I think the first half is incredibly strong, like 5 out of 5. And the second half isn't so much. It gets a little bit too contained to one location, especially to one room. And it slows down. Like, it starts out like pedal to the metal, and it slows down quite a bit in the second half. And I kind of wish it kept a more consistent pace throughout it. But as it is, I think this is still a really impressive movie that definitely will generate a reaction out of you. It is not for the faint of heart, but the sadness is a darn good time. Before I go, I just want to send out a huge thank you to my patrons who truly make this channel possible. Thank you for supporting me as I do it. If anyone else wants to support me, there's always a link to my Patreon in the description below. And I want to give a special shout out to Christopher Nelson, Richard Adams, and Elizabeth Hughes. You all are the absolute best. If you want to check any of these movies out for yourself, I do have streaming options right here on the screen. Of course, they're always subject to change though. And if you want to pick any of these up on physical media, I do have affiliate links in the description, and using them does help support the channel. And if you want to hang out with me more, you can click the video on the screen and give a like and a subscribe. I would certainly appreciate it. Thank you all so much. Don't forget to enjoy yourselves today. Have some fun, and I'll see you next time. Bye.